Oh, sorry there, you seem to have caught me thumbnail posing. But anyway, you saw the title, let's get into it. We got the G9ii here. They finally got me to buy this, and I did buy it. Spent my own hard-earned cash to get this thing. And I just wanted to talk about a couple of my first impressions. You know, what have I thought about this thing? What are some of the things I noticed immediately when picking this thing up, as well as in the days to follow, taking this on a couple of work projects and using it in the real world. So yeah, here we are. We've got 10 things about the G9ii. Let's get into it. And the first one is, it is a very familiar camera. If you've used any of the new Lumix cameras, from the GH5 II to the S5 II to the GH6 and the new S5 II series of cameras, the body is very similar to the S5 II, although obviously it's got some differences. The sensor is a different size. There's no fan up top. The less talked about one is there is an extra customizable button up front. So that's fun. And when it comes to the menus and the frame rates and the resolutions and everything like that, it's very similar to the GH6. So it's going to be a borderline seamless, if imperceptible, jump in body style from the S5 II to this, or if you're going to have both, or with the GH6, it's very similar as well. And number two is one that I haven't really heard anybody talk about, and that is just the weight. You know, we've heard a lot about the size. It's big for a micro four thirds camera. It's the same size as the full frame camera, blah, blah, blah. And that's true. So maybe I shouldn't have blah, blah, blah them. Sorry. But something no one has talked about, to my knowledge, is how light this camera is. It is very light. It's way lighter than the GH6. It's lighter than the S5 II that it shares its body design with. It's lighter, honestly, than the original S5, which is a pretty light and small camera. It's even lighter, I checked this by the way, it's even lighter than the GH5. This is actually, to the gram, on paper at least, the exact same weight as the original G9, which couldn't have been an accident. So I thought that was something that just bared noting, is while this is a big-ish camera, not really, but it's not that heavy, really. And using it with the 12 to 60 or even the 10 to 25, it really was a noticeable weight difference where I was just zipping around with this thing. Number three is the autofocus. Yes, it is as good as people say. It's better than the original S5 II firmware. It's way better than the GH6, and the GH6 was already way better than anything else Panasonic could put out up to that point. So yeah, the autofocus is really great. It's great in photos. It's great in videos. It's great for YouTube content creation. Look how handy that is. And that is where autofocus really shines, in the solo content creator space. Although, obviously, with interviews, sports, and weddings, it has a lot of utility as well. A few other things that I haven't heard people talk about with the autofocus is that One Area Plus is still not fixed. Panasonic, I love One Area Plus, but it needs more sizes. It's so small. The box is like tiny to like less tiny. What is this? A focus area mode for ants. The other thing I noticed was, I'll put this down. The other thing I noticed was that the icon for animal eye autofocus is very cute. Riveting content, I know. What up, kings, queens, and lords of all kinds? If you are enjoying this video so far, please go ahead and like it. Subscribe, leave a comment on what you've seen so far. Even a kind of simple video like this takes a lot of work, and I really appreciate anybody that does comment and subscribe. It really helps this channel out a ton. So thank you so much, and let's take a look at stabilization next. What do you guys think? Next up, we're talking stabilization. Now, there's been, as usual, the typical incremental kind of increases in the internal image stabilization, the in-body image stabilization of this, and you can kind of tell because I know a lot of people make posts about this. It's normal, but there is a noticeable thunkiness to the IBIS in this camera. So if you're freaking out, it's normal. But the big seller here is that E stabilization and the Super E stabilization. Those are the official names, don't look it up. And how good those are in really fast action situations. And thanks to Geeky Nerdy Techie's video, it's made clear to everybody now that the crop for those modes in this camera is a lot less than the S5 II. Probably has more of that barrel wide angle distortion to compensate for or something, I'm not sure. But the lack of warpy corners, the super stable footage, I think it's amazing. So yes, it's as good as people say, but Without the E-stabilization, I don't know if it's that much better than the GH6, just my first impressions. I think it is better, like just the orbiting kind of close-up shots that I do for like details, as well as just like the walking shots are better. But again, is that like a reason enough by itself to buy this camera? But in combination with the E-stabilization, maybe.
Look, I did a collaboration, so if you want to see some test footage from the G9ii and the S5 II, we did a fun collaboration here, so definitely check this video out. It's a good one.
This is a very steady camera, and I'm looking forward to seeing how other companies try to compete with this, because most of the companies need E-stabilization to match just the internal stabilization of Panasonic. Again, the best implementation of both I've seen in any camera for video. The other thing I noticed is there's a lot of what I would consider missing features from the GH6, one of my pet peeves with that camera, that are returning to this camera. We've got live view composite, which was on the GH5 Mark II, was on the S5, was on the S5 II, was on the G100, but it wasn't on the GH6. For some reason. You've got other things like eye dynamic, which I'd love to make a video on someday, but that's really nice for getting a little bit more fake, I know, dynamic range looking shots by basically just lifting your shadows. Because when you're sending this off to editors, like I shoot a lot of weddings, I send off the footage, somebody at the company edits it. I don't know how much, if any, color grading they're doing. And so having a camera that can have that eye dynamic is nice. And again, basically every camera but the GH6 has it. So a lot of those little bits and bobs that are disappeared from the GH6 are back in the G9 Mark II. Not all, but some. I'm doing it again. Panasonic, where did live cropping go? I use it. I just started using it with the GH5 Mark II for wedding details, and it's in the S5, it's in the S5 II, but it's not in the GH6 and not the G9. Where's my live cropping? Can we get it back? Please? It's not a huge deal. I really didn't use it that much, but it was kind of nice for some stuff. So obviously phase detect autofocus is a big deal. We all know it. We're not pretending here that it's not. But I really think the second reason, and maybe the only reason, even if you have all manual focus, this might be a reason to get this camera. And that is the improved implementation of dynamic range boost. And what do I mean by improved? I mean, they listened to what I said and they did it. Again, I said it before and I'll say it again. I tell Panasonic what to do. They watch my videos, they do it. Like at 25 to 50, GH6, I predicted these things / manifested them. Anyway, what I'm saying is I always said that the dynamic range boost should be automatic, and that's kind of what's happened here. Now, it's not automatic, whereas you can't go all the way down to 250 in Vlog, for example, anymore, but you are gonna start at 500, which is with dynamic range boost enabled. So basically dynamic range boost is always on, there's no switching, so you could say it's automatic, you could say it's just completely different, but having pretty similar results in terms of noise, dynamic range, and all that sort of thing with dynamic range boost implemented full time at 500 ISO, which is not that much higher than the GH4s and the GH5S's 400 ISO that we're all used to. Okay, it's better. It's really, really great because 2000 was just a little spicy for some situations, let's be honest. And the noise at 2000 is pretty similar. Dynamic range boost on in both cameras. So yeah, very impressive that they were able to take that really impressive technology and put it into this camera and bring Micro Four Thirds up to the level of a really solid APS-C sized sensor. Not quite full frame, but pretty close. And while we're at it, let's go on to number 7. That's going to just be the image overall. So let's talk about photos real quick because some people care about that sort of thing. So the raw images, very, very similar, although just like the GH6, you're going to kick in that dynamic range boost at a certain level. So the really low ISOs are going to be just okay. And then at like 250 or 400 or whatever, I think it's 250 probably, you get a little bit more dynamic range even in raw images, especially with overexposing. The next thing I noticed is I like the JPEGs out of this camera a ton more. I never really talked about this before, but I felt like the JPEGs on the GH6 were kind of a little digital, a little sharp, and something about how the processed JPEGs look on this camera, especially with the new Leica profile, it is really cool. But in any profile, I just think the G9ii JPEGs look a little bit better. Going to video though, I think we do get a similar S5 II effect with the video where it's a little bit noisier, it's a little bit more noise reduced as well. It's got a little worse dynamic range than the GH6. Very, very tiny. but it is there, just like the S5 is better than the S5 II in terms of image quality and dynamic range by just a tiny bit. The vlog footage is fine, but some of the other profiles do have a bit of a digital edge on them, right? We might have heard about this a little bit. It's very minor, very niche, but it is there, in my opinion. It's not as bad as the S5 II in terms of that look, but it's not as good as the colors and the rendition and just the image of the GH6, in my opinion, or even the original S5. But more testing is required on that one, that's for sure. Number 8 is just the stuff I miss and the stuff I'm appreciating more about the GH6. The fan, the tilting screen, the bigger, nicer grip, although I do like the lighter size. The grip on the GH6 is just like perfect in a lot of ways for me. That audio button on top, I never thought I'd use it, but it's the only way I do audio now. And yeah, I got it assigned on a different button on the G9ii, but in a different place. I don't know. We'll see. I'll have to get used to it, but I'm gonna miss it. Just those little things about the GH6 that make it a true video camera are starting to stand out to me already, although I'm still gonna be using the G9ii for video all the time. Number 9 is gonna be the heat issue. I definitely will never forgive photographers for taking the fan out of this camera. I already had beef with you guys, now it's really on. But yeah, there is no active cooling in this camera, and so the most demanding video modes, your 6K open gates, your 4K 120s, they're gonna overheat this camera just a bit. Now, obviously, I haven't had that happen yet. I don't shoot a lot of 4K 120, I don't shoot a lot of 6K. Okay, y'all, so it happened. Getting ready to export the video. Had a wedding, some Indian ceremony stuff that you've seen played through at the video, and G9ii overheats. It happened, so, you know, and this was nothing crazy. This was 4K 60 frames per second, but we had an HDMI going into a monitor. So, yeah, if you are just running and gunning, shooting with the camera as is, you know, body, lens, battery, and camera, that's it, you're probably fine, except for 4K 120 and open gate stuff. But if you're outside and it's hot at all, we're talking, this is 80, 90 degrees, but inside, but still hot, but no sun. Like, is what is the big deal for most people. So, you know, I've got a Ulanzi fan now. I would definitely check out _tographer / Stranza's video, as well as Geeky Nerdy Techie. They both kind of journaled their overheating experiences with the G9ii. But if you're someone who likes to rig out your whole camera rig, monitor, power supply, with the USB-C or all that stuff, G9ii might not be the best camera. So this is a first impression. Who knows, it might be better, might be worse. The Ulanzi fan might help a lot. But if you like a stripped down, light, run and gun camera, G9ii is probably not gonna have many issues with overheating. But I just really wanted to jump in here and reshoot this entire segment basically really quickly. So anyway, we'll see how this survives a Chicago summer in the wedding industry. I believe in it. I believe in you. You can do it. And now, before my final thing I noticed about this camera, we have an honorable mention that I just noticed recently, and that is the hot shoe's different. Like, I feel like every Panasonic camera has always had the like very similar hot shoe design, and this is just like feels kind of like a really basic little, I mean, I don't mind it, it's just weird, right? And number 10 is just reappreciating how customizable these cameras are, right? Like, when you first get one of these cameras, you really do notice like, wow, I have a lot of stuff to set up. I gotta turn the beeps off, I gotta turn the ISO into 1/3 increments, I have to turn the red record ring around the edge of the screen when I hit record. I've gotta change the constant preview, which should be on by default, by the way, but just to let you see what you're doing, I've got to reset my creative video combined set, which is the weirdest name for but you know, the video photo switch and settings, you know, all this stuff. You got to go through kind of menu item by menu item, programming in the buttons, doing the quick menu, all that sort of stuff. And I did kind of like it because it made me really appreciate how customizable these cameras are, but in the other way, I was like, man, this is taking forever. So yeah, number 10 was just, yeah, this is just as, if not more customizable than most cameras in Panasonic's lineup or just in the camera world in general. And I really do love just the plethora of options they give you on the touchscreen, the quick menu, the buttons, the custom things, the filters, the different codecs, all this stuff in this camera, and it's all tweakable and customizable with very few exceptions. So really, really love that. And that's the video. A few first impressions and things I noticed about this camera. If you've got any questions, definitely let me know down in the comments below. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for watching the video. Thanks for all that stuff. And if you like this video, feel free to subscribe. Never ask people to do it. Always ask people at the end when they're already stopped watching. And if you do subscribe, I'll see you when I see you.